This is my video on 2.3 fatigue and recovery by Euan Rainer Gray. So, the different types of the causes of fatigue. So the first type is depletion of energy sources. So I'll be talking about creatine phosphate and muscle and liver glycogen. So creatine. This is used for resynthesizing a small amount of ATP very quickly, whilst increasing the intensity of short duration activities. For example, a 100-meter sprint, you would be running very fast at a high intensity but for a very short duration. So how do we obtain creatine? It is obtained in our diet. For example, we eat meats and fishes, and these are quite high in creatine, and also we make it from in our body from amino acids. There are other ways, such as creatine supplements, which are available to buy and taken in very small quantities, but over a long period of time this can increase creatine stores. But there are some side effects to taking these, such as nausea, muscle swelling and cramp. These could be due to the amount of water that is retained in the muscles, so that will cause the cramp and the muscle swelling. So as we can see here, this is the Wingate test, and as we can see, the data clearly shows that the level of power produced decreases due to levels of the PC depleting. So as we can see, it drops down, and then as the PC runs out, it keeps on dropping and more until all the PC runs out and you stop. So, glucose and glycogen. Glucose and glycogen is used for long duration activities at a lower intensity, such as a 10k run, as you're running for a long period of time but at a low intensity, about sub-maximal level. As glycogen levels deplete in the liver, the amount of glucose that is in the blood also decreases, because glycogen is converted into glucose, and if there's none of it left to convert, it will deplete. This is linked to the reduced rates of carbohydrate oxidation and the rate of fatigue, because if there is no carbs, the rate of fatigue will increase due to the lack of energy the muscles need to be able to take away all the fatiguing elements, such as lactic acid in the muscles. So the glycogen stores need to be replenished by drinking energy drinks, because they have a amount of carbs and energy in them, or such as any other high carbohydrate food like pasta and sweets like Jelly Babies. They are high in carbohydrates. So, gluconeogenesis, which I will talk about more in detail in a bit, is the formation of glucose and from new sources such as fats and proteins, and this is a way of making energy. If this way of making energy is very slow, so it takes a long time to start, and it takes a long time for us to get energy, so therefore it's going to be very insufficient for our body. So after the glycogen stores run out, this is when glyconeogenesis occurs, and the performer may feel very fatigued and exhausted due to the lack of energy. This is called hypoglycemia, where he has run out of all this carbohydrate in his body and he can't convert anything more, and he's just very fatigued. So that was the depletion of energy sources, and this is the effects of waste products that we have on us during sport, and this is what causes fatigue. So there's three main ones. There's carbon dioxide, blood lactate accumulation and acidity, and heat. So where is CO2 produced? Carbon dioxide, or CO2, is produced in the muscles when they are contracting. This is then exhaled out of the body, but how does it get to the lungs? So, well, 23% of the carbon dioxide is carried out as carbaminohemoglobin in the red blood cells to the bloodstream. 3% of it is dissolved into the plasma in the blood, and 70% of it is carried as carbonic acid, which then diffuses into the lungs as we exhale it. So this is controlled by the chemoreceptors as they measure the levels of acidity in the blood. So as the acidity in the blood increases, this is when we start to increase heart rate, expelling more of the CO2. It does this by measuring the pH, so if that decreases, the heart rate then increases, as well as the lungs increase the amounts they breathe in and out. So lactic acid. So how is lactic acid produced? So lactic acid is made when we use our lactic acid system, as it is a byproduct of our pyruvate, and it can make muscles fatigue quite a lot. It increases the acidity of the blood but decreases the pH. So as it does this, it inhibits the way that the enzymes work, so this means they will be denatured and they won't want to work in the environment they're in. This causes overall a decrease in intensity because the body is using energy trying to get rid of the lactic acid. As it accumulates, the pain receptors in the muscles are triggered, as they will be causing pain from the lactic acid. There are some advantages to lactic acid. The lactate that is produced can be used as a fuel source for different types of tissues, for example muscle tissues and the heart, helping it contract. But the main disadvantage is the hydrogen ions that are produced from the lactic acid. These are the causes of the fatigue. So, OBLA. As we can see here, this is a OBLA graph here, and at 2, this is where the lactic acid starts to occur, and at 4, OBLA begins to occur, and the amount of lactic acid heavily increases upwards. So when the levels of lactic acid increase in the blood during exercise, causing high levels of fatigue, so the graph clearly shows that the more workload that increases, the higher the lactate increases. So heat, this is the final waste product. So how is heat produced? Heat is produced when muscles contract, causing them to heat up. This has an effect on the body, how the body works. So 20% of the oxygen inhaled during exercise is converted into mechanical, but the rest ends up as heat, which is a lot of wasted energy. This can be affected by the humidity of the environment, because the higher the humidity levels, the harder it is for the sweat to evaporate on the skin, causing the temperature of our core to increase. This is called hypothermia, which in turn causes fatigue, and in many serious cases it can cause death. Hypothermia, which is the opposite to hypothermia, can affect both central and peripheral processes involved in a production of muscles, force and power. So this is said by Nybo and Sector in 2004, Todd et al. 2005. So hypothermia is an increase in body temperature, in core body temperature, but hypothermia is a decrease in core temperature. So neuromuscular fatigue. So this is also split into 3 sections: the depletion of acetylcholine, reduced calcium ion release, and nerve impulse transmission. So what does this have an effect on the body, and what are the effects of it? So this occurs in the neuromuscular junction, as the acetylcholine is the main factor to allow the nerve impulse. If not enough acetylcholine gets to the receptor sites, the nerve impulse won't be able to travel across the synapse to the muscle fibers. This won't allow the muscle contraction. This is called the all or nothing law. If all the acetylcholine gets to the receptor site, this will trigger the nerve impulse, which will start sliding filament theory. So if someone is taking a shot put and all the nerve impulse is allowed through, this will start to allow them to throw the ball. But if there is not enough and the acetylcholine, if there's not enough of it, none of it will cross the synapse, stopping sliding filament through. Therefore there's no muscle contraction and the shot put won't be thrown. So cholinesterase is an enzyme that breaks down acetylcholine to prepare it to be used again. It breaks it down to allow the next muscle contraction to happen, as acetylcholine needs to be cleared in the synaptic cleft. So another factor affecting fatigue is the insufficient amount of this, as if it isn't cleared away, it will stop the next impulse being cleared across the synapse, stopping any other muscle contraction, and there will be no sliding filament theory. So the reduced calcium ion release. So what is calcium used for, and how do we lose it? So calcium is used to start sliding filament theory. So we lose it through in tired muscles that we've been using through activity. The muscles leak the calcium ions, weakening the contractions we give through sliding filament theory. So weakening muscle contractions, which limits the amount of power we are able to produce through this sliding filament theory. So nerve impulse transmission, action potential, and the consequence of the decrease in pH. A decrease in pH or increase in acidity can cause a decrease in conduction speed of the muscle fibers receiving a nerve impulse, which decreases the strength that is able to be produced by the muscles. This decreases a number of things. The peak twitch tension, as a decrease the membrane potential. As this decreases the membrane potential, this also decreases, as shown in the graph above. So as it gets lower, the membrane potential gets lower and lower and lower, and then eventually it will just plateau. The frequency of the impulses going to the muscle fibers also is affected. So the fast twitch fibers are usually the first to fatigue, and this causes them to decrease in force, allowing limited muscle contraction, and this will have an effect on any performer.